Ladies and gentlemen, it's time once again for another season of Chewing the Gristle with yours truly, Greg Kaw. Can you believe it's already season 6? We've got so many cool interviews lined up. Are we going to talk about music? You betcha. But what else are we going to talk about? Well, quite frankly, anything that comes to mind. So stay tuned, doggone it. Let's chew that doggone gristle. Season 6. Come. This week on Chewing the Gristle, ladies and gentlemen, we have the mighty Seth Rosenbloom, a young blues firebrand hailing from the Boston area. Hell of a nice guy, great guitar player, delicious tone. Let's chew the gristle with Seth right now. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, once again, we convene around the gristle fire. Is that a thing? I think it is. For another installment of Chewing the Gristle, today I have young blues madman. I'm going to call you a young blues madman, Seth Rosenbloom, joining us from beautiful Massachusetts, where he dwells. I just saw him there not long ago. Always a pleasure hanging with him. Seth, how the heck are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
A pleasure. So where do we find you today?
We find me in Western Massachusetts. I'm about, 10 minutes or so from the Vermont border in my little, office. I wouldn't call it a studio as much, even though, I have all the devices, all the fun toys in here, all the guitars on the other side. But yeah, just hanging in my house.
I see for those who obviously can't see, because this is an audio activity. One of these days I'll do the video aspect of it, but it's just a level of complexity that we have not surmounted yet, Seth. But be that as it may, I see a phalanx of delicious Tone King amplificators next to you, and that is actually the first time we met was at a Two Rock. Did I say Tone King?
You said Tone King. Two Rock.
Yes. Yeah, Freudian slip there. Sorry about that, folks.
Both great amps.
Yes, exactly. But Two Rock, obviously great amps, and you've been playing them for a while. That's where we first met, when there was a NAMM performance there. So how long have you been affiliated with Two Rock, and how does that all work for you?
I think that was so we met at the 2021. And I think right before COVID and all that stuff, but 2019 was really when I got started with Two Rock, and it was actually those NAMM shows for 2 years at that venue Slide Bar. It was a good friend of both of ours, Andy Wood, had done a show there in 2018. And he was moving his to a bigger venue. And I said, do you mind giving me the contact? Try to put something together. And with the guys who said yes to me right away, it was all Two Rock guys. So then got in touch with Eli, and it's like, hey, you want to backline the show? So my first time really, getting to know Eli and the Two Rock guys was from putting on those NAMM shows. And those were great with, Josh and Kirk was on the first one. They were a fun time. And it was, a tiny stage with 6 Two Rocks, which is a lot.
Yeah, we ended up doing a couple of different Reverend events at that same establishment. And it was a cool place. Unfortunately, it is no more. It was a victim of COVID-19.
It sure was. It was a bummer to not be able to do more of those there. But yeah, it was cool. It was like an old sweaty rock club. Like you pack a couple hundred people into that, and those were a blast.
They were absolutely a blast. So what Two Rock amp do you like to wield these days? Because I know they make a bunch of different things. And I'm just curious as to what you've got behind you there, lurking in your lair.
Yeah, so I have 3 of them personally. One of them, the combo, is down in my living room because it's a great kind of grab and go one. But the 2 heads I have are the main ones I use. When I can have everything I want, I actually like having both of them because they both kind of do a different thing, and just doing the dual amp setup. But I've got the Bloomfield Drive, which is very much the Dumble Overdrive Special mid-focus kind of thing. Great cleans on it too. That one actually I'm about to drop off for Matt Schofield is playing Jimmy's on Sunday, and we talked to him yesterday and loaning him that and a 410 for that because he's done the same for me in Florida. But the Bloomfield Drive is kind of that Dumble mid-heavy, really creamy, overdriven thing. And then the one that I've been really partial to over the last year, picked it up at NAMM last year, is the Vintage Deluxe, which is more, I never know how to describe it, but it's more Fendery. It's more kind of like, it has elements of, it's not a blackface Fender because it's raunchier than that and kind of more of the brown face thing, but then has elements of the tweed thing too. And I mean, I've used that probably more than any amp over the last year, just used that on half of the new record, and it's killer. It's like, you don't need pedals, but it takes pedals great.
I was going to ask you, how do you like to run the amps? Do you do it differently? Do you sometimes just gas the amp and then use the volume control on the guitar? Or do you find yourself setting it cleanish and then using pedals to go over the precipice?
In between. So I always say I like kind of that almost like Malcolm Young level of breakup where you have enough to play the rhythm parts. If you dig in, you could probably, at least with humbuckers, play most of the gig. And then any of the gain pedals I use, like no gain pedal I use would be considered high gain. And the gain knob on all of them is pretty low. It's really, I'm just using them to hit the front end a little more. Just because I think that a lot of overdrive pedals sound better into an amp that's already at least kind of on the edge.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah. When the amp's crystal clean, it's almost too much treble and it doesn't do the thing that I want it to do.
I agree. So is there a wattage variance on these amps that you like to use that you're able to get that just on the brink of saturation without either being too loud or not loud enough?
The master is so good on these that the wattage doesn't seem to matter as much with the Two Rocks as when I was gigging vintage Fenders. And it's like, okay, super reverb, I love it, but I'm going to get in a fight with every sound guy at every club. The Bloomfield Drive's 100 watts, and it's not that loud. Like, it's more that you have the big natural low end, you have the headroom when you want it. The Vintage Deluxe is 35 watts. Okay. I don't know that there's a perceivable volume difference, but I'm never running the master wide open, and they both take pedals well. I mean, I'm often running both those heads at the same time, and with a similar level of breakup.
And I know you like to bring out your glorious old Strat. Tell us a little bit about that rascal.
I do. I've had the Strat for, I guess, bought that in 2018. So coming up on like seven years now, and bought that from Lark Street Music down in Teaneck, New Jersey. Buzzy Levine, who's the brother of great player here in the Boston area, Duke Levine.
Oh, yes.
It took me about 3 months to actually buy it because I went in there to try some old brown face Fender amp that ended up not being great, and tried it with this old Strat that was hanging on the wall, super beat up, and fell in love with the Strat. Did the thing I think we all do when we find a guitar that like blows us away, of it's like, let me try another in the shop and make sure that I'm not just wanting something new, but it's that good. So he had like, a 63 Strat. He had I think a 58, and this blew him out of the water. But it is very, very much player's grade. It has its dings and bruises and everything. And the guy who was consigning it, I guess, wanted money like it was straight. And
yeah.
It took him a few months to
soften up.
To talk him down and to talk some sense into him. But it was one morning I was heading out to do a little mini run down in North Carolina and was driving down for it. And checked Lark Street's website that morning, and it had just gone up on the website. And I called Buzzy. I said, I am in Connecticut. I'm going to drive as fast as I can get away with, legally or not. And can you hold it for 2 hours? If I love it as much as I did, I'll take it. If I don't, I won't. And he said, sure. So got down there and, dropped off a check for more money than I had ever spent on a guitar. Liquidating some other guitars. And
as we do.
Yeah. It's been a great one. It changed my mind on Strats, because I always thought I was a Rosewood guy.
Right.
Until I played this one.
And then you like that spank of the, is it an ash in maple?
No. So that's the thing. It's late 56. So it's alder. So it's not as bright as I kind of associated with maple neck Strats.
Sure.
And a lot of them I've played since. It's like, I find the thing, and I've found this with some newer Fenders and Gibsons, it's like, in a way, almost a caricature of what people think that guitar is. Because you play a modern, like, maple neck Strat, and a lot of them do tend to be super bright, super in your face. Play a lot of the vintage ones, and it's like, oh, they're not that bright. They're a little more subdued. Right. And it's the same thing with, like, forever I thought I hated Les Pauls because they were 11 pounds and, just super woofy. Right. And you play like a 50s Gibson and they have this bell-like clarity. Right. And it's like, oh, that's different than I thought that thing was.
Isn't that, it's a little frustrating because it's almost like you're better off not knowing. You know what I mean? It's like, it's like when you think about old Les Pauls and you actually play one, you're like, oh, now I get it. And, and to be honest, a lot of those newer, I mean, you can find a new custom shop, Murphy aged, especially the Wildwood ones, Les Pauls that are in that ballpark, that kind of telly on steroids thing. I always use that as a kind of a thing, to describe what old Les Pauls are like. And, boy, but when you know it, because to your point, I mean, when we were kids growing up, I mean, I got a few years on you, but, back with all the Les Pauls that we had access to were, the 70s and 80s ones, which were, kind of high gain and woofy sounding and heavy. Yeah. And you're like, well, this doesn't sound like the same guitar I'm hearing on, Live at the Fillmore or the Beano record or, Bloomfield or Peter Green and so on and so forth. Then you actually play one of the old ones. You're like, oh, there it is.
And I think I got so twisted on Les Pauls early because, and I use the same thing. If it's like telly on steroids, the clarity. And a lot of the ones I like are even the mid 50s, wrap tail with P90s. I think those will kill a lot of bursts and, PAF gold tops. But when I started playing guitar, when I was 11. My first guitar, I'm 32. So this was 2003. And my first guitar was a red Ibanez RG 120. I had that and a crate practice amp. That was the first thing. But my neighbor across the street, who was, I think, about 10 years older than me, he had not even, I mean, I'd take one of the 70s or 80s over like the 90s Les Pauls where they really got heavy and weird. He had a 90s Les Paul custom in like that cherry wine. It was the burgundy red.
Yep.
He had that thing. That was the first nice guitar I ever played. And I loved that guitar. And he had like a Marshall, one of those valve state combos. I remember the rig because it's like you're going from the Ibanez RG and the crate practice amp to that. And it's like, this is awesome. But as much as I loved that guitar, that left an impression on me of this is what a Les Paul is. Of it's heavy, it's woofy, and it's kind of really focused in the bottom end. And once I started, getting exposure to some nicer Strats and Tellys, I very much went that direction of like, I like the clarity, and I kind of wrote off Gibson in a lot of senses. But you're right, across the board, Fender and Gibson, especially in recent years, like you can find good ones. They have really, I think, both stepped up their game in terms of trying to get closer to those classic examples. I've been really impressed. I mean, I took you in there a couple of weeks ago, Music Emporium, they're a Fender custom dealer, and all the ones I play now are great from them. Yeah. All the Les Pauls that I've played of custom shops are really good. And then there are also, of course, all those insanely good builders getting super close of like, have you played one of the Gil Yarns?
No, I don't think so. I've heard of them.
Oh, those are insane. Those will blindfold and almost trick you into thinking it's a burst with a good one. And they're not. They're custom shop money or a little above, not burst money.
Interesting. I'll have to check one of those out.
Hard to find, but they're cool.
Now you have, is it a 345 you've been playing?
It's a 345. It's 68. So a late 60s one, which I feel like a lot of people don't like because the nut width did get narrow, but being a Fender guy, it appealed to me. And, the price on those is a fraction.
Right.
Compared to if you want to dip into the early 60s.
Now, did you disengage the Veritone, or do you utilize it?
It was already done and it was monoed out before I bought it. So I have actually, on top of that dresser behind me, which has pedals and all the stuff on top of it, there's a bag that says Music Emporium on it that is the original wiring harness, all of that basically they just ripped out, put in a repro 335 harness. So it's a 345 look, but it's basically a 335.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the Veritones have a thing, but I never found myself, wanting it. You know what I mean? It's like I would rather have the out of phase thing than kind of the weird man in the box type of, guitar in a box type sound that you can get with the Veritone.
Every once in a while, like listening to some of the B.B. King records and stuff, I want it for that thing.
Right.
But then all the rest of the time, I don't. And it's like, exactly. I just like what that guitar does. And it's funny on gigs recently and on the half of the new record that's done, I played that guitar more than I played a Strat, which I never thought would be me. But I've bonded with it well. The humbucker thing, it's a different thing.
It is indeed. And it was interesting when I was a young lad. I always thought that you were either a humbucker guy or a single coil character. And now, of course, I've realized, well, you can actually do both and so on and so forth. But when I was very young, I was of the mindset that was kind of your school. You know what I mean? It's like you either were into the clarity and the percussive kind of things you could do with single coils, and then you could do more the beefy, things that you would be inclined to do on a Gibson. But, you can do both, and they both have their thing. Do you find yourself playing differently on either instrument?
In a way, yes. I mean, there are certain like sonic benchmarks that are almost that thing. And it's weird because I went full circle, like probably for the first 5 or 6 years that I played guitar, I didn't know anything with single coils. I think the only time I had a single coil and I never used it was after that red Ibanez RG120 got one of the, what was it, like the 550s or something where it was hum single hum.
Oh, yeah, I remember those, yeah.
And I never used the single coil in the middle. It was like occasionally those in-between positions, you'd use it for the kind of spanky, position 2 and 4 Strat thing. But everything I had, because I was into more of the rock stuff and the shreddier stuff, it was all humbuckers across the board.
Right.
And I think the first guitar that I got where I really used single coils was a Tom Anderson telly when I was probably, I don't know, 17 or 18 or so. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. And it's like, there's a clarity to it. And early on, I went down the rabbit hole of playing with way too much gain and everything. And it was kind of a revelation of, oh, single coils cut better than humbuckers do. Like I can still have that gain and I won't get as lost in a mix. And then for a while, I kind of went totally away from humbuckers. And now it's like, oh, they're both cool.
Right.
They do different things, but neither are really better than the other. It's just a different flavor.
Well, talk a little bit about how your journey from, as you said, the shreddier mentality to discovering blues and wanting to do that.
Yeah, so it was kind of, there were two, I think, kind of pivotal moments with that. Of when I started playing guitar, I'd seen the movie School of Rock when it came out. And I was like, oh, I just want to play like the kid in the movie does, and I'll be cool. And so off the bat had, I think, actually the soundtrack for School of Rock on CD, which had Sunshine of Your Love by Cream. It had Immigrant Song by Zeppelin, had some AC/DC. So it was very classic rock heavy. The kids in school were all listening to like early 2000s pop punk and emo stuff. And, you know, I was never that into that. But the first band I loved was Metallica. And it was like, you know, Enter Sandman, Master of Puppets, and was playing with kids in the neighborhood doing that stuff. And I think the first song that I learned, or I know first solo, was Nothing Else Matters. That was the solo. It's like Kirk Hammett was the guy for me. And then had a teacher at the school I was at who was one of the music teachers. Fantastic influence at that point for me, just exposing me to different bands. He was a huge Rush fan, and he was a huge Dream Theater fan. Rush was kind of too weird for me at that point. Now I love it, but it's like you go from Metallica to Tom Sawyer, and it's like, what is this? I don't know what to do with this. But the Dream Theater entry point was like some of the stuff that was coming out then, which was the Train of Thought record, which had like As I Am and the real metal heavy stuff. And it's like, that's not that big a departure from Enter Sandman and some of that. It's just heavier. Got very, very into Dream Theater. And I know this doesn't sound like this is how I got into blues, but it was, I think I was 13, saw Dream Theater was coming to Boston, asked my parents if I could go. And my parents said, there's no way you're going alone to, you know, the Orpheum Theater, which I think you've played in Boston.
Yeah, exactly. I played there. Yeah.
It's like, that's a great theater, but kind of down and dirty area of Boston and everything, especially at that time. And my mom said, I tell you what, I'll buy you tickets. I'll take you if you go to any show that I pick. And, you know, my dad was concertmaster of the Boston Ballet, classical guy. My mom, big Beatles fan, Motown fan, all of that. Basically, neither of them were too keen on the hard rock and metal stuff. And she read Boston Globe article, up and coming blues guitar player in the jazz and blues section. And it was Joe Bonamassa playing Sculler's Jazz Club in Boston. And this was probably 2005, early 2006. And I kind of went, not kicking and screaming, but I wasn't excited for that show. I was like, oh, blues, that's boring. That's like, you know, whatever. Sure. It's quiet. It's no loud amps. And of course, walk in and Joe had Marshall Silver Jubilees and, you know, Strat and Les Paul. And of the two shows, that's the one that resonated with me way more. You know, you have that first kind of experience, small club, 150, 180 people, whatever that room fit.
Right.
It was loud. And I still remember he closed it out with Jeff Beck Band Blues Deluxe.
Right.
And it's like, oh, that's cool. I want to do that. that was the first thing. And then didn't immediately go there. And then one of the guys that I got into that was very kind of the bridge between the more guitar shreddy stuff and the blues thing was Landau. It's
Okay.
like had a huge Landau phase, and it's like, okay, there's a guy that can do the instrumental guitar thing and rock, and then can also do a slow blues with the best of them.
Right. Absolutely. So at what point did you realize that that's just what you wanted to do for a living? And your parents being, especially your dad being, a professional musician, how did that all play out in terms of their level of enthusiasm?
So I always say I give a lot of credit to my parents, because looking back on some of the ways that I got here, it's like, wow, that was bold at that age, especially. So my parents actually met in music school. My mom was a violinist too, and then she ended up going into early childhood education. So didn't play professionally past probably early mid-20s or so. But, grew up, and my dad was the main breadwinner, and he was playing Boston Ballet, Boston Esplanade Pops, subbing with the Pops and Symphony, and was teaching a lot. So I kind of saw that thing as a freelance musician, what you have to do to cobble together everything. But, grew up very much a middle class upbringing, and I played violin growing up. When I started playing guitar, like my main love as a kid was always baseball, not music. And I was never big on school. Like, I liked school, but it was never like, oh, I really want to put in the extra effort for this. I really want to do this. So growing up, I always, I guess, would say, when I'm 16, can I drop out of school and just play professional baseball? And that was my childhood plan at 8 years old, and ended up going a different direction of I think by about 14, I was really, really serious about the guitar. Had stopped playing violin and was like, this is the thing I want to do. And after freshman year of high school, went to a Berklee summer program, because was right down the street, of course. Right. I grew up, now I live about 2 hours outside the city, but I grew up 15 minutes outside Boston. So
I was going to say 2 hours outside the city. What is that, like 5 miles?
So that's more like I grew up what should be 15 minutes, and sometimes it does take an hour. But I could take the T in, when I went to the Berklee summer program, I was getting on the Green Line from Newton, Mass, down right to Heinz Convention right at Berklee, and went to the 5-week program, which was kind of they do some of the week-long, like, instrument-specific things. The 5-week program is decently representative of a college experience, in the sense of, you have your private lessons, you have your harmony classes, your ear training classes, all of the above. And I loved it. Got back to high school in the fall, and sophomore year of high school. And my parents, very much on scholarship, had sent me to a great private school through elementary school. Ended up at the public high school, and was pretty bored school-wise. Of that private school was so good that I was ahead in terms of a lot of the classes without realizing it. And just wasn't getting a whole lot out of it. And at that point was taking lessons after that Berklee summer program with Joe Stump, who was Berklee professor, was going to his house, had been paired with him there, because it was still very much at 16 more into the shreddy thing than I was the blues thing, even though I was going to a couple blues jams a week to get out and play and get all that experience. And I don't know how it started. I know that it kind of ended with my parents going to the back to school night at my high school and not being very impressed with it. But I said, hey, I'm not doing anything here. Can I just drop out and go to Berklee now? And that's what I ended up doing.
Oh, no kidding.
I left high school kind of Thanksgiving of sophomore year, got a GED so I could apply to Berkeley, and went when I should have been junior, spent a year there and then left. But, that was where it was kind of, there was no backup plan. It was, okay, going both feet all the way in of
right.
Not finishing school in the traditional way, not even finishing Berkeley. And at that point it was, you just do it. But I feel like with my dad as a working musician, there wasn't that pushback. He was like, only do this if you know it's hard. Like, this is not the easiest thing that you can choose to do for a living.
Right.
But if you love it, there's no better thing.
Right. And that's sound advice.
It is. It is. Because
I think that, my experience is a little different. I've talked about it many times on this doggone podcast, but it's what I try to tell my kids who want to get in. Of course, Dylan's already in it. And I tell anybody who's willing to listen, it's like, listen, if you don't realize that the love of what you do has to so far eclipse the negative reinforcement and walls and obstacles that are going to be put in your way just to make rent, doing what then don't do it. And it's the same thing when I would talk to my parents always had people talk to me along the way to try to discourage me from being a musician. They all basically said what your dad said. So that's good advice.
So you had more of the pushback at that kind of entry point?
Well, they just didn't think it was a viable livelihood. They were supportive, you know what I mean? Sure. I always supportive of doing lessons and making sure I had a proper, when I was looking at schools, they helped me vet, the right school to go to that was within what they thought was reasonable, both financially and also more of a traditional education. So I had to go to a state college as opposed to a conservatory or something like that. But all along the way, they had discussions with my teachers at the time and having them intercede on their behalf to describe exactly how, what I was up against in terms of being a musician. Because it was terrifying for them. I mean, my dad was a lawyer. I think he was the first of, probably a couple of generations that ever went to college. They were all working folk. And all my siblings, went to college, got straight jobs and so on and so forth. No one was really into the arts. So I think it was just a fear of the unknown. It wasn't that they were, aghast for some kind of moral or, any kind of reason like that. They just thought, my dad would always say, I don't want you to end up working in a car wash. Not that there's anything wrong with that for those of you who work at car washes, but, and now my kids kind of see that are going to the arts, all the different hats you got to wear in order to make it to payday. But as your dad said, and I'm sure as you can speak to as well, it's worth it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, because I know my dad got more pushback from his parents when he was kind of going into that. And he did graduate high school, unlike I did, but didn't. But he kind of did 1 year of music college and then left. So like the college thing wasn't a big deal because he said, hey, look, I've never been asked where my degree is for anything that I've actually done.
Totally.
But one of the questions I remember him asking me, because at that point, like I wanted to either be in a band or do my thing and like have that be the thing. And he was clear-eyed enough to know that doesn't always work out for one reason or another. And his question was, hey, if you become a musician and the performing doesn't get you, where you want or isn't as viable, would you be happy being the guy who is teaching 40 lessons a week, 50 lessons a week? And I said, absolutely. Like I'd do anything where this, now I've kind of done that and come back from that a bit, because that is, if you do want to do the performing too, there's certainly a burnout factor with
absolutely
any amount of volume. But it's like, I love teaching. I love doing all those different things that go into it. And I think his real point with that was, as you said, it's like, you got to kind of wear those different hats and have those different avenues to kind of cobble everything together. One focus often won't quite get you there.
Exactly correct. But, if I find that if you're willing, and I think that all of us who really love it find in all the different opportunities by saying yes to things that we didn't necessarily envision as, what would be a big part of our income or whatever the case may be. As long as you can interject that love of what you do playing wise into those different scenarios, it's awesome.
It sure is. And I like, I'm sure you did the same early on. It's like you say yes to every single gig, even if it's not a style of music that you'd want to play. And it also gives you broader experience and exposure.
We interrupt this regularly scheduled gristle-infested conversation to give a special shout out to our friends at Fishman Transducers, makers of the Greg Koch signature Fluence Gristle Tone pickup set. Can you dig that? And our friends at Wildwood Guitars of Louisville, Colorado, bringing the heat in the shadow of the Rocky Mountains. So let's talk about your recording career thus far. I know you put out a record that Josh produced a few years back, and then there was a record that you produced as the crow flies, I believe, 2023, and now you're working on this new record that I think it's okay to say that who was involved with Mr. Bonamassa and so on and so forth. And so describe for folks, we've talked about it because what we all have to do in order to go forth and make a living doing this. These recordings are something we make money off of, but they're more of a calling card, would not you say, at this particular juncture?
I sometimes, and it's probably a little cynical, but compare the albums, because it's really streams at this point.
Exactly.
Almost like, a Costco rotisserie chicken or the hot dog and soda combo of like, it's been well publicized Costco loses money on every single rotisserie chicken sale.
Right.
But why do they do it? Gets people in the door. And it's, first of all, artistically, like I want to be making the records and I want to be pushing myself to create something in terms of that. But you're right. It's also the calling card. It's also the thing that it's like that. That is really the thing that gets people in the door to shows, that gets, them interested in either taking lessons or buying any of the courses we have out and that kind of thing. And, I just enjoy making the records too.
Right.
It's like, you don't want to go out and play the same tunes over and over and over, and having the stuff kind of crystallized that way, I think is really great. And so had worked with Josh on Keep on Turning in 2018, and at that point really felt like I needed someone to produce it who could have more of the 360 view of the project and let me just play guitar and sing. Because how in the last 10, 15, 20 years, it's like sessions in the studio with a full band are not what they were 30, 40 years ago.
Totally.
And so I never really got that thing of being in sessions a lot. Like I'd get called for stuff, and most of it would be have the tracks sent to me, recorded at home, send them back. So I don't think at that juncture I knew well enough how to communicate what I wanted to a drummer, a bass player, a keyboard player, and also try to play my part as well as I could. And, Josh, in addition to being a monster guitar player, performer, singer, everything, is such a great producer, has such great ears. And I learned a lot from doing that one, where I did the next one myself. But yeah, this one, working with both Josh and Joe, it's great. Just got all the mixes finalized. So for these first 5 tunes, and they're coming out great.
Excellent. So what kind of plans do you have for this year in terms of touring, putting songs out? I think we were talking about how you might drop a few singles before kind of doing the entire package as a entire release.
Yeah, I think for multiple reasons, going to do a lot of singles from this one. Probably the first single sometime around April or May, kind of, in the first half of the year. Touring wise, it's been an interesting last couple of years, because had a booking agent who I was with for a few years. Then, of course, COVID hit, and then he got sick and passed away.
Oh, good Lord.
I think it was 2023, just as we were getting As the Crow Flies out. And, with a lot of independent agents, it's not like there are 5 other guys at the agency, or either one other person to pick up the slack. So the calendar kind of went blank for the rest of that year. Last year was really booking myself for the most part. And now working on trying to find.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that for just a second, because I think that a lot of people who maybe have never tried, or who are fans of yours or mine or whatever the case may be, and they're like, why does he never play around here? It's almost like they think that you've got like a vendetta against their community or something.
Sure.
And they don't realize that getting a record deal is almost easy in comparison to getting a decent booking agent to take you on and to do stuff. It's extraordinarily difficult.
Yes.
And then finding someone who's got the gumption and the wherewithal to be able to not only get the gigs, but then to route in a way that makes sense, and to actually care enough about you and your and your financial and physical well-being to map out something that makes somewhat sense. I mean, that's the hugest thing about the industry that I don't think people really have any idea about. Would you not agree?
I completely agree. And, there's that hard thing, because often, booking yourself, obviously you're going to try very hard with it, where maybe you're putting as much, or at least as much effort into it as an agent would. But there's also the thing of, a lot of venues are comfortable working with agents and certain agents, and they get an email from an artist. Are they dealing with that? Often no.
Exactly.
Where it's, if they can talk to an agent and book 5 shows on one day and kind of fill their calendar and have it be easy, that can be preferable. But yeah, it is hard to find that right fit and make it all happen. No, I couldn't agree more. So, right now we're trying to get something set up with a new agent. I have, I'm doing the West Coast, a little run in LA in January, right before I know you are out there as well, right around NAMM time.
Yep.
And then right now, trying to get stuff on the books for UK and Europe at the end of summer, trying to kind of do a couple, probably clinics, workshops on top of some tour dates over there. But yeah, it's hard, because it's also, I've seen it in the Boston area, how many of the smaller clubs in the last few years have closed. So there's also there are less rooms.
Right. Well, it's interesting, because you came out to our show at the Burren, which is a small joint, but that's a place where you can make money.
Yeah, that's the Burren. It was the first place I played when I moved back to Boston in 2017, and I still play it because Booker, Tom Bianchi, who's one of the best guys in Boston, just fantastic.
Yep.
You can make money there, and it's a vibe. Like,
totally.
You pack that place out, and it's fun. It's 100 people stuffed in, but it's like how many venues that we love are that thing? You think about it in LA, where do you have to go? You have to go see Landau or Scott Henderson or Josh play the baked potato.
Right, exactly.
And it's 65 people in there.
Right.
You feel like you walked into a living room. I mean, I remember the first time walking into the baked potato to see Landau, and I'd seen all the videos online, and it actually looks bigger on YouTube.
Totally. Yep.
Than it is when you're sitting at a table and there are people like right in front of you. And just was down in Nashville for a couple days last week, went to the Underdog for the first time, which I feel like is the new guitar spot
right
in Nashville. You know, Guthrie Trapp, I know, has residency there. I saw Jack Roosh play there with a great organ player. I'm blanking on his name, but great drummer, Wes Little, who we played with at Woodshed last year.
Okay, yeah.
He was well. You had Toby and you had your whole thing there, but you had Toby and Dylan there. But Wes was there, and it was great. And that place is tiny too.
Right,
like that is not a big room. That's maybe you get 100 people in there. Right. And some of those rooms are the most fun, and when it's done right, yeah, you can actually do well in those rooms.
Well, I think another thing that people's perceptions of how do these guys make any money? Well, if you're playing in a room where you're packing a room with, let's say, 100 people in it, or whatever the case may be, and you've got you charge a decent ticket price, right? That it's not extortionate. it's not Ticketmaster. You know what I mean? You can make good money there, but also, people want to support with, I've got a pretty deep merch table with all these different things, which are, again, evidence to all the other hats that we have to wear, from instructional material to, of course, all the different records, but then, some gear, pedals, or of course, t-shirts and hats and all that other kind of stuff. But playing a smaller venue that's packed with enthusiasts, and then afterwards, selling a bunch of merch. I mean, you keep your overhead low, you can make some dough, which is, I'm just having a blast doing it. And I liked, we were kind of talking about this too. It's like we work our own merch tables. We don't have someone along working the merch. Sometimes someone will work the merch table, a friend or a family member, if they happen to be in that town. But I find that it's far more profitable to do it yourself, because you can describe what everything is, for one, and people are much more likely to stop, of course, if you're there. And then plus you get to meet everybody that came to the gig, and you find out you make all these people, once you make that personal connection. First of all, there's nothing like being in the room. It's as much as we can talk about how the internet has done well for both of us in terms of getting the word out to a much larger audience. When they see you in person and experience that moment, even if there's a video of that moment, it's still not the same as actually being there and making that personal connection. And that merch table and hanging with the folks is all part of that.
Well, and every time I come see your show, you consistently have, especially for, not playing theaters where it's someone who has a whole merch trunk and everything and display. You have one of the best merch setups for any band that's playing clubs, because you kind of hit that target of like, you want a hat? Got hats. I know. I actually have my your hat sitting.
Oh, there it is. Perfect.
Yeah. And you have the shirts, you have I think some of the instructional stuff sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then also like the pedals. And it's like, wow, I always look at your setup and it's like, I got to step up my game a bit on what I have. But you're right. It's like in a room where you make that connection, you're running your own merch, you can really sell some stuff and make good inroads there. And yeah, it's, I think also the thing about a club, and the Burn's a great example, is it's like some of those independent local clubs where someone is taking it on and really doing it right. They're also doing it with the artists in mind, because usually like Tom from the Burn, he's a great bass player and singer and performs all in the area. His wife is fantastic blues guitar player and singer as well. So he gets it from the artist side, where I remember and I'll leave the venue very much unnamed, but kind of a bigger venue that has some, smaller rooms, and got presented with a deal from one of them. And it was so unbelievably terrible. I couldn't believe it, because like the ticket price, they were like, no, we just don't do anything over this number. And it was like $10 or $15. And I'm like,
Right.
Well, your room seats 100 people, just the raw math there. Like, okay,
Right.
so the most it's going to gross for a trio is $900 or $1,000.
Right.
That already doesn't work. And then they had something like a $400 marketing budget.
Of course.
And it's
Yes.
like, I'm sorry, but
Right.
at that point, it's like, oh, and the sound, I was looking at the deal. I'm like, if I'm reading this correctly, I can walk away with $400.
Right.
No, thank you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, it's so great when you find those smaller rooms that are doing it right, not trying to extort artists.
And there are, as I'm sure you've done the same thing, you travel around, you try these different clubs, and you realize the ones that are your rooms and the ones that aren't, obviously. And they could be rooms that are great for other people, but not for you. I mean, like sometimes we'll try like kind of a random rock club.
Sure.
And we'll do okay, but you're like, well, we should really be doing better in this town. And you realize that, well, the people that are kind of into what similar music that we are, none of those other people are playing at this place. So it's not a place that's on the radar for folks that are like, oh, I wonder who's playing at the such and such tonight, So it's entirely on you and your social media reach or whatever the case may be to try to get people out, as opposed to having that, venue, like, the Saxon Pub is a great one for us, or, various, obviously the Iridium is a good one. The Burn's great for us. Jimmy's is great.
Jimmy's is fantastic.
It's fantastic. The Funky Biscuit is a great one. These are the kind of rooms where it's like, oh, people that go to that club like a similar type of music. And so the people that would be most likely wanting to come and see us are going to be checking out that calendar.
I also find one of the things, and I'm curious for you, when you say rock clubs, are a lot of those rock clubs that you'll do standing?
Yes.
Because I find that one of the big tipping points for me is the standing venues and the seated venues.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Consistently do better at the seated venues, because you think about like the Burn, Jimmy's, Funky Biscuit, or one of the ones I've done really well with in South Florida is, have you done Arts Garage?
No, I don't think so.
It's right north of the Biscuit. It's Delray Beach there. And like a listening room. And I remember playing that for the first time. My old agent had booked me there. And it was like a weekend Florida run out. It was a festival over by Tampa, blues festival there. And then Arts Garage was using local guys, and they were great. Matt Schofield, actually, his bass player down there. And it was great band and everything. And I drove over to the East Coast of Florida and saw the ad, and it was a guarantee for that gig, and saw the ticket price. And I went, oh, cool, no one's going to be there. Because at the time, I think Arts Garage, it was like a $35, $40 ticket, wow. Which at the time, I was not a $35, $40 ticket. But, I looked at the past thing, and a lot of names of kind of in our world had played there and seemingly done well. And that place holds, I don't know, 190, 125 people showed up. I was expecting about 4. And it's like, oh, okay, they get the market and they get what they're trying to do and what they're selling. They know their area. They know the ticket price it can support, because it's undoubted. It's like you play New York, or you play Boston, or you play South Florida. That's a different ticket price than if you're playing some places in, say, the mid-Atlantic or middle of the country. It's just like New York, people are like, oh, it's a $50 ticket. That's cheap.
Right.
Where other towns, it's like $50. That's no way.
Exactly correct. Well, I remember in the day, playing locally all the time with my band and, just trying to keep busy, trying to get out of town, do stuff. But in the meantime, we were a high cover charge at $5. And we'd be, those clubs where you're set up like right by the door. And so people are coming in and you're literally, as you're playing, hearing people argue with the doorman about paying $5 to get in. And you're like, you just came from a Bucks game where you probably paid God knows how much for your ticket, let alone the beers and subsequent food and parking, and yet $5 to come into to support this band is just beyond the pale.
Oh, it's crazy. And being, down in Nashville last week, have you ever kind of done in Nashville the whole Lower Broadway stretch and going in there?
I've just seen it from afar, but yes,
So there's one reason, in my opinion, to do the Lower Broadway stretch. And it's the one club there, Robert's Western World,
right,
which
exactly.
is kind of the remaining. And, that was the Don Kelly band and everyone who played in that. And the kid, he's not a kid, but he's well younger than me, Luke McQuarrie. Have you seen him?
Yeah, I've seen him, yeah.
So every time I go to Nashville, it's like I will fight with all the masses on Lower Broadway to go into Roberts and hear Luke, because he's just mind-blowingly fantastic.
Right.
And it was nice. It's the winter, so it was a lot quieter than the last time I was down there. But like those bars, the few that have tried to do cover charges, like people just won't, it's no cover charge. And it's like, then those bands are playing 4-hour sets for tips.
Right. It's insane.
And it's the thing where it's like, well, the venues half the time where there is a cover charge, they want to split on the door.
Right.
There's never split on the bar somehow.
Right. Exactly correct. I used to always think that the tip thing was like an insult, and it was always, I'd see it down in Nashville and I would see it in Austin. And I was like, this is just, especially as you're saying these world-class musicians who just got off the road with so-and-so and they want to go out and gig while they're in town. And you're like seeing all these people that have been playing in arenas and stadiums and now they're playing in this hole in the wall and people are passing around tips. But I've changed my perspective on that. There was a club locally that I don't do many clubs locally anymore because there's not that many places left that are kind of more of the showcase club. But I turned my mind around pretty, because like if you bring in people that want to come and see you and you get a base pay plus all the tips, it could be a surprisingly lucrative evening.
It sure can. There have been a few places I've done even on the road where that's kind of the thing. Like there's a club in Florida that I did and everyone does. Have you done Little Bar?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think of the place on the.
I don't know if you could get the organ and the Leslie through the door there. Actually, it's this place. It's on the west coast of Florida.
Okay.
So it's Goodland, like Marco Island, which is like all the way south of Naples, all the way down. Like you're in the Everglades, basically.
Got it.
And I was terrified leaving that gig because someone had just totaled their car, I guess, running over like a python or something.
Oh, good Lord.
Like 18-foot python. And my biggest fear is snakes, like I am. But it's this place and like it's the only entertainment on this island. And like all the blues guys will do it, like Albert Castillo will do it, all these and you walk in and it's like there's a mounted PA, sort of, not a big PA or anything. And it's like this tiny bar. It's like, 60 people can fit in this place? Oh, they go crazy and base pay, and they have a band house. And then the tips are just insane there because people, it's like you either stay at home or you go out for the entertainment there, and that's it.
Wild.
And some of those places can be great.
It's crazy all the different things we do, doggone it, to play that sweet music.
It sure is. Well, and you have the thing of obviously, with Toby and everything, you have a lot of gear you're hauling around to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's when we first started to hit the road, he used like the digital B thing, that XKX or whatever it is, through a real Leslie, and that's okay. But for him, it's like, man, I need that. It's just, if you're going to have an organ, you got to have an organ.
I couldn't agree more.
So we just decided that's what we're going to do, and that's what we want to. We want to have big drums, big guitar amps, and B3s. So that's what we're doing. And luckily, we've got the logistics worked out. I mean, it makes for, like, when we're doing those gigs out in LA, we need to route there and route back, because I remember the first couple times that we wanted to, I think the first time we did rent a B3, and you might as well just drive out there and pay the gas.
It was that much.
Oh my God. It was insane. It was like $750 a night.
Oh my God. Because I've, plenty of times, I think you've done it too, like you backline a guitar amp, and it's
right, no problem.
Not expensive, and it's like, oh, it's a deluxe reverb. Great. I can make that work.
Absolutely.
I've never, I did not think organs would be that expensive. And it's also like, with backlining stuff, the one downside is, I'm sure you get the organ, and did Toby like that organ, or was it?
Well, see, that was the thing.
Less than ideal.
We had to find the good ones, and so, and then he, one of the first things I did, or I was concerned about when Toby entered the band, is like, well, we better hook up with Hammond, so maybe we can get some help when we're traveling. Maybe we can do some fly-in stuff. And I got to say that Hammond's not a company that really is at the forefront of supporting their artists in that way. And so therefore we had to figure it out all on our own. And needless to say, when we go to Europe, it's a concern. So we've got places where we can get stuff, but it's not cheap. I mean, it's absolutely the most expensive thing that we spend money on when we tour, if we have to get backline, is because we need the real thing, or else it's just kind of, it makes it cheesy. You know what I mean? So,
well, and seeing you guys, it's like, it's legit, it's loud, it's good, and it all comes together. And there is that thing, I think, especially with organ, and especially in a trio, where I've found, even when I do 4-piece, which I do more and more, and I always want the real organ, like because there's something with the stage volume and with our perception playing, we're getting fake organ coming through a monitor.
Right.
Is not the same as having the Leslie at the other side of the stage.
Let's put it this way. I've never had Toby in my monitors.
I believe you. I have never had any organ player in my monitors. It's like you have a Leslie, and it does something to, like, the wetness and the fullness of the whole sound.
Exactly.
Because I know we were talking this last time. It's like, you're not even using reverb right now, are you?
Exactly.
And it's like, I feel in a trio, I need reverb, or I just don't have that space. But it is a luxury where, like, in January, when I do the West Coast, I'm going out there for 3 dates, have guys on the West Coast,
right?
Fly home easy as anything. It's like, Zach, I think, has that super reverb that's pretty solid. And it's like, has the super reverb, take a guitar pedal board, and done. Right.
And we were contemplating doing a fly-in, but then and Zach's like, yeah, you can use my stuff. I got a drum kit, I got this, that, and he's got a Nord. And then you mentioned the word Nord to Toby, and his peaceful, humorous disposition turns into changes.
I'm sure it's it's not it. It's not it. There's that magic of real organ.
That's a fact. Well, listen, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure rapping with you today. Thanks for doing it, folks. Please check out Seth online. It's just SethRosenbloom.com. Am I correct?
It sure is. And Instagram, all the fun things.
Yes, check them out. And I look forward to seeing you soon. I'll definitely see you out in California, I reckon.
I will see you there. I might try to make it over to either the Friday or Saturday of your shows. Because I fly out. I know NAMM is shorter this year, so I fly out Sunday morning.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
I'm in and out because I'm there for 10 days.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to be in Southern California at that time of year.
You have the same thing, coming from cold weather climate. It's like, give me Florida, give me LA, give me anywhere that's not here from now until March.
Exactly.
Well,
all right, my
thank you
friend.
so much
You
for
have a good
having
one.
me.
Great
You
to
too.
see you. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, thanks for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Chewing the Gristle. We certainly do appreciate you stopping by. Make sure you tell your friends all about us. I think they might enjoy themselves. So thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.